saying hello to Sebastien Martin from Canada, and he's for first time with us in UFO Disclosure Bulgaria. First of all, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself for the public.
Well, thanks, Ivan, for having me on your show. My name is Sebastien Martin. I was born in France and I moved to Canada in 2000. And for a long time, I've been working in the business industry, in IT, and also doing some selling in food. So I was doing honey sales. So I had my own company, and that became a multinational, which is a business I sold in 2014. My experiences basically to do with the consciousness started when I was pretty young, but I kind of ignored it. Like I used to see UFOs and even like shadows. Basically, there were ghosts that were traveling in my living room and stuff like that in my house. But I never really paid attention to it because my my life was not around those beings or those events. I was more focusing on my day-to-day, and I was not really paying attention to that. So it never really startled me, but I kind of accepted it as reality, which is interesting. I went to school in France. I went to the army in Germany, but I was in the French army in Germany. And then I moved to England, met my wife, my future wife in France, but moved to England. And then after that, we moved to Canada in 2000, like I explained. And when my my wife became pregnant with my daughter, I started to see more events. Like I was seeing I had remote viewing experiences for different events that were completely random, like I had no clue about. And I even saw my own child, like my own daughter, at the age of 20 years old, when she was still in the womb of my wife. And at the time, we didn't even know the sex of the baby, but I started describing her how she was going to look like. And later on in life, I also did the same thing for my son. And I even told my wife she was pregnant with our son. And, so it was kind of interesting too. So that's basically my life. I've been, in the food industry for a long time, for over 10 years. I'm still involved in the business, but as a director. And since my interviews, I've been interviewed many times over the years. And I got some attention from various people in the, government agencies, and they started paying attention to my stories based on the events I started to describe. And so they want to find out how I knew about these events, and especially about the details I was describing on the radio shows. And for me, it was very innocent at the time because I was not really caring about my safety, or I was just only telling the events as I was seeing them. So that's basically how it all started for me, and where I got involved in the remote viewing programs or different missions I got involved in for the last years. That basically came from one agent overseeing my interviews and my Facebook profile even, and following me and finding out exactly what I was saying. And one day I was able, so that was back in 2014, I believe. And in 2014, I started to contact that agent who was following me on Facebook. And I sent her a random message and I said, I know what you do and your life is in danger. And that person is Elia Casey. She's now out of the service, and she actually wrote the introductions for my book that I wrote back in like 3 years ago. And she kind of described all of the remote viewing sessions that we did together. And there are certain things that are still classified that she could not talk about, but she was saying that all the stuff I've been doing were accurate. And she was not a believer at the beginning, but now she is.
Okay. So you said that you helping with police or some of these law forces, with some cases with kidnapping and murders.
Yeah, well,
How police in this agency, they I mean, how they trusting you to do that?
well, first of all, no, I did not start with the police. I did some missing children's cases in the past, which I volunteered because some friends of mine, like, we have friends in common, and those people reach out to me and say, can you help? Like, they have the contacts, and so they put me in touch with the authorities or different organizations to help them out, and that's what I did basically over the years. That's not the bulk of my work. I did some work with physical agencies, like government agencies, like Department of Defense, like the Department of State in the US. So I worked on missions to do involving the military and some agents like overseas. So helping agents overseas, looking for missing agents, those kind of things. I've been helping on different missions, like Alia said in the book. There was one ally in the military that was in Turkey at the time, and I knew that the guy was a double agent. So I told Alia that she should not trust this guy, and she said there's no reason why we should not trust him because he's an ally, he's a friend. And I said no, he's not. Like I can read his mind. So I described a meeting that Alia was in Turkey, and the guy in particular was right in front of her, and they were all smoking cigars. Alia was not, but all the men were smoking cigars in the room. And I was able to describe the meeting that happened 3 days prior to when I talked to her. And she was able to confirm that meeting. And I described the man in person, the hairy man in front of her. And from her point of view, so I was able to see the whole event from her eyes and looking at this man. And while looking at the man, I was able to jump into his mind to see what he was thinking. And it was not pleasant. So it was something targeting Alia. And I said, he's basically targeting you, or he wants to put your life in danger somehow. So she said, thank you. She told me that later on, they tapped his phone, and he was planning on kidnapping her in France for a meeting that she was doing at the time with a person in charge of security planning. And that meeting happened, but the guy was out of the picture by that point.
Okay. So we're doing this conversation with you because I would like to, that will be shared with the public in Bulgaria, and not only in Bulgaria. Looks like the American government and the other agency, they taking this your ability very seriously. Mm-hmm. And looks like they are with your ability, you are able to help by a different way to be resolved some serious cases. Well, before to turn on the camera, you said that you've been abducted several times, and especially when you was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything about this abduction, or they clean erase your memory?
Yeah, well, I guess I was erased because I did not remember anything. But when when my child was born, so in 2010, then I had like some visions. So my visions really started when I was younger, around 16 years old, when I had very intense visions. I had automatic writing. I used to write like an alien language in notebooks, like page after page for 2 hours straight without realizing I was even doing it. And all of that got destroyed. But I remember the stories, obviously, because I lived it. And that was during my time in high school. And then I moved on. Like I basically grew up and I went to work and these sort of things. But when my child was born, the visions started again. And the reason why I had them again is because for 10 years, I basically told my wife that I would not have visions because she was afraid of them. she already knew about the visions I had when I was younger. And she told me that she was so afraid by them that she wanted me to see her killed in a car accident or something. So I created a Faraday cage around me for 10 years until it was no longer able to protect me. And all of these visions came back in full force when my child was born, basically, or just before that. And I could not stop them. It was like a flood of information coming in every day, and it was so real. And I had a very hard time dealing with this and growing my business. I had, 34 employees. We were dealing with many countries, and I was just too overwhelmed with the workforce that I could not focus on that. So I went to see a clinical hypnotherapist at the time to deal with my visions. And the first question that the therapist said to me was, do you want to get rid of them, or do you want to be able to control them? And so I said, now you say that, maybe controlling them might be a good thing. So at least I can do that when I've got time, or when when I think of it, instead of being bombarded by them every single day. So we did some hypnotherapy work, and she did some regression times where she said to me, well, when were your visions started really efficiently when you had them? They were pretty strong. And I said, well, when I was 16 years old, I had a lot of visions, and a lot of events happened to me when I was at school. And some of my close friends used to tell me that they were seeing me on the school premises when I was in the library 12 kilometers away. So I had what do you call it, bilocation events happening. And I don't know, I didn't see a UFO. I never saw anything during those times, but I had some very strong abilities to the point that I was able to read people's minds. I was very feeling strong on that at the time, and plus the automatic writing as well. So when she decided, the hypnotherapist asked me to go back in time when I was 16 years old. I was hypnotized. I went through the work, and I was fully relaxed in my chair. And then I could see myself on the ground, I could see my feet. And she was asking me to look at my feet. So I could describe my shoes, and I was wearing jeans, and I was outside, and then looking around, I was at my school, but at night. So I was outside, and then I said, oh, my feet are leaving the ground. And I never had stories. I never thought I was abducted in my life before. So I wasn't even thinking about anything at that point. I was only describing what I was seeing. And so I could see that my feet were leaving the ground. And all of a sudden, my back basically was laid back, in midair, basically. I was on my back in midair. And I was going forward. I was brought forward into this spacecraft, which I described as being kind of round shape, but like oval. And there was a trap door, or door on the side that was very bright. It was open, and I went through that. And while being on the spacecraft, that's when I saw those beings. They were tall gray aliens, and they were all around me. And they started to, argue with each other. Like they had this guttural sounds that were like woo, 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 like very deep, and I didn't know what that meant, right? So I only described that. And so the therapist said, well, can you ask them what they're arguing about? And I said, well, I don't speak alien, I don't know what they are saying. And she said, no, like using your subconscious mind, you can ask them what they're arguing about, and they might give you the answer. So I asked them, and it's funny because I was listening to her, and I was seeing the event, like I was living it through my own eyes. And I asked those aliens what they were arguing about, and they said, we can't touch you because you've been tampered with. That's what they said. And so the therapist said, well, can you ask them what they mean by being tampered with? And so I was met with silence. Those aliens would not tell me why and how, whatever. So they just stayed silent. I was at a dead end. And so then she said, can you ask them to show you what they mean by that? And that's when they showed me symbols in midair, like holographic symbols. They were blue. and they represented, there was an upside down triangle with 3 black dots on each point. There was a space in between, and then there was a star of some sort that was like a 7-pointed star, and then there was a staff, like, with a ball on the top. That's what they showed me. And so I described that, and then the therapist said, well, can you ask them to tell you what those symbols mean? And once again, I was met with silence. And up to that point, I did not believe what I was saying or what I was describing, because I've never been hypnotized before in my life. And I was so conscious of the events that I truly believed that I was making it up. And so I was not really taking it seriously. It was kind of helpful and funny, for me, but at the same time, it was effortless. I wasn't thinking of anything. It was just the events as they unfolded, before my eyes. And all of a sudden, she said something that completely changed my views on that. And she said, can you ask them to show you where you've seen those symbols before, if they mean anything to you? That's what she said. And that's when I completely blacked out. Basically, everything turned black. And all I could feel was being pulled backwards very fast. And then I opened my eyes and I could see my hands and my feet, and I was a baby. And I was inside a black liquid. So the liquid looked like oil. It was very oily, like you could see like the light flickering over it. And then on the side of my body was basically hinges almost, and there were symbols. There were like upside down omega, like the Greek omega symbols, and they were all across on each side. I was in a cylinder basically, and there was a dome over me, and through the dome I could see silhouettes moving. I could not see what they were, but I knew they were beings, or some human beings or something. So the therapist said, well, can you come out of your body to see what those beings are? And the next thing I describe is me being in space, floating in space, and looking down at this spacecraft that was beneath me, and right behind the spacecraft was Earth. Was the planet Earth. And I said, oh, I know exactly where I'm inside the spacecraft. I can see it, like, I'm right there in that room. And so she panicked because she wanted me to leave my body to go in the room to see those beings, but I didn't control it. I literally came out of my body to see where I was, and that's what I did. And so she brought me back into my body, and then she asked me to go back in the room to see my environment. And I could see the cylinder case where my body was, and I could see those beings that were basically now what I call Pleiadians. They were wearing blue uniforms, and the upside down triangle symbol that the gray aliens showed me in the spacecraft when I was 16 years old at the time, those symbols were on their chest. And it was a man and a woman. The man looked like almost like Zeus, like he had a beard, he had some kind of helmet, like a trident symbol on top, and but very basic uniform, same as the woman, was like blonde with long hair next to him, and they were pretty tall too. I couldn't say exactly how tall they were, but they were easily over 7 feet tall. And so these were the people I saw. But they were not looking at me. They were just, in the room, basically. And everything around the room felt very organic looking. Everything felt alive. Like the floor was alive, the walls were alive, everything felt alive. That's the only thing I could say about the experience. So that's basically how the experience ended on my first sessions. And then after that, so when I came back home, I started to, receive more information about those events, right, as it normally happens. But what I didn't say to the therapist is a week before that session, I had a very weird encounter, and that was actually on November 11th, 2011. Okay, so that was a very specific date, and I wasn't into that before. So it was a day off. I went to the office and I decided to do some extra work at the office on my desk. And then through the window, I could see a face. And that face was the face of a human being that looked like with like high cheekbones and big eyes. And that face is the face I saw in the morning when I woke up. So it was in my dream. And he stuck with me. So I could see a bust. And that's all I could see. And the being was looking at me with a big smile. He had like bright teeth and this perfect smile. And very forced as well, at the same time. He looks forced, like it was not natural. But that being stayed with me for the whole day. And I had no idea why. So after dinner that day, I decided to sit down on my sofa and meditate to find out exactly where this all came from and what I could extract from that. And as I did that, I could feel that while my eyes were closed, I could feel an energy field going all around me, circulating around me. And then it stopped. So when it stopped, I kind of opened my eyes, and the being that I was seeing in my dreams in the morning and that I saw all day in my field of vision was standing up right in front of me in my living room, like physically. He was there. He was solid. I could not see the books that were behind him, like on the shelf, like pretty much the way you can see me now with the books behind me. That's how I saw him in front of the bookcase while I was sitting on the sofa. And I was completely frozen. I could not move. As soon as I opened my eyes, I felt scared for the first seconds. When I opened my eyes and I saw him, my first reaction was, there's an intruder in my home and I need to react. Like a basic instinct. I was trying to basically get up from the sofa, but I could not move. I was literally frozen. And that being, first of all, said, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about. My name is Zor, and I'm from the Galactic Federation, or Galactic Alliance, actually not Federation, the Galactic Alliance. That's what he said, and that's how he introduced himself. And so we kind of talked for a while, and to be honest with you, the conversation was it's still vague. Like, I don't remember the whole conversation, because we talked about my visions, we talked about why he was there, and basically he disappeared. Like, I remember him vanishing in front of my eyes. He kind of disappeared in a haze right in front of me. And when I saw that and I stood up, I remember walking back into the kitchen because I poured myself a chamomile tea before I sat down, and it was like super hot. So I thought I would leave it on the countertop to cool down, and I would just grab it and drink it. When I went to the kitchen, I was looking down at my feet, and my first reaction was, I've lost my mind. Like, I'm just basically, I can't believe this. It's not possible. And I was walking back into my kitchen, grabbed the mug, still thinking about what just happened, put it to my lips, and the chamomile tea was freezing cold. And then I looked at the clock afterwards on my stove, and I had 2.5 hours of missing time. So that was, and it felt like 15 minutes to me when I was talking to Zor, at the time.
Yeah.
So when I went to see the therapist, it was really to deal with my visions, and I wasn't even talking about Zor because that was something that I wasn't prepared to talk about at the time. And then the whole abduction thing happened. So it was kind of weird that all of that happened around the same time, and then more information came to light. The fact that Zor said to me through my star parents. So basically, Zor, what I discovered was my younger brother as part of my star family, and the man and the woman I saw were my star parents, basically. So it's probably hard to believe for most people, but that's what I've lived through. Well, that's what I've experienced. And at the time, when I had those interactions with those beings, they talked to me afterwards. And what my star father said to me was, well, you are not supposed to be remembering any of this, but because obviously you do now, you would have, your mission is to awaken the star seeds of this planet. That's what he basically said to me. And since then, I haven't done anything about it, to be honest, but I've been I've done interviews in the past, and I've helped other people, but I haven't really done much in the consciousness movement other than that. But that's basically my journey so far,
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I got involved in the past. I mentioned that before. I got involved in missing, children's cases where, unfortunately, the kids were dead, and I was able to see that, and that's not pleasant. And that's why, I don't want to be involved in that. And but most recently, Dean Radin from the University in California contacted me, and same thing, asked me to help him on a cold murder case. So we knew the people died, but he said that there were no suspects. So right away, as soon as he sent me that email, I could see the face of the killer, and I was able to describe that, and I could see that it was around a university setting or close by, and that the boy was between 20 and 25 years old. And what Dean replied to me was, well, funny enough that you say that, because the victims were all students from the university in Idaho, and that the killer may as well be a student himself, because if you describe him as being 20 to 25 years old, all the victims were in their early 20s as well. And so since I didn't know anything about the case either, it was already mediatized, it was already in the news, but because I had no information about the case, I didn't even know how the victims looked like. So I wasn't focusing on that. And so when I started describing the guy in question, the victims didn't look like him at all.
Yeah.
So that was a very interesting point. And so that information now is in the hands of the FBI, and I'm now going to be doing that because it became a federal investigation. Yeah, usually when I do like a remote viewing section. So what I explained to you before is, when I see an event or a person, I usually don't see them through my own eyes. I see them through somebody else's eyes. And it's not something I got trained about or trained for. It just happened naturally. And it never failed me since I had it. So I was able to naturally see events, and I was able to be there or see the event as mini movies. And so it's very clear. And at the same time, I receive information. So information comes to me. I can hear the information
about the boy, or
about anything in general. For when I do remote viewing, I can see an event and I connect the dots. So I receive the information, and then from that information, sometimes I jump from one person to another, and then it becomes like a network.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. How you feel? I mean, do you think you're superhuman?
No, I don't. I'm perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, I see you're a normal person. You're not flying in your room.
No, I don't think we are superhumans. We're just people with the abilities that we open ourselves to. I decided not to close them or shut myself off to them, but listening to them and being open about them. And when I trained children to read with a third eye, like my daughter was able to read a whole book completely blindfolded, and I've got videos of her doing that too. And when you try to train a child, they don't use their logical brain. They just accept whatever information you give them as facts, and so they just whatever you tell them happens. Yeah. And so even today, I still feel pretty open that way. Like I will not judge anything happens to me, because I know using your logical brain destroys any potential of doing remote viewing. So you have to be completely neutral and open to the idea, open to receive whatever information comes your way. And that's what I can do all the time. And as soon as I trying to be logical about something, then it usually doesn't happen. It's usually like false information, or I know it's wrong. But I know that already, so I don't have to even go there. That's the reason why when Wendy approached me, or when Dean Radin approached me with the basic information, the information comes. remote viewers get trained using coordinates or codes or numbers. That's another way of distracting the mind from actual events. And so you receive information based on what is the target, and then they just see it the same way as I do, but in a different manner. So they start seeing things like with lines, and they start drawing things while getting some names, or they put some words down, and they can draw some pictures, and then from that they can draw a conclusion as to what the whole thing is. So that's it's a different method, I guess. I never used that method, never trained with that method, but I just kind of arrived to the same conclusion. What I can tell you is so what I've been able to do in the past, something that I will do with under like an actual experiment at a university, would be to have an impact on the of an atomic clock, trying to either slow down the needles or stop it altogether, and then just comparing it to the other atomic clock that has the same time showing. So that's to see how the psychic powers can influence matter. So you can understand that in the past some people did that for military reasons, and that's called remote influencing. And I don't do that. I don't want to do that, because for military purposes it's very nefarious and negative, and I don't want to do that. Never wanted to do that. To me, it's like cheating. It's like you are trying to use your psychic abilities to win the lottery numbers. And if you try to do that, you might as well just like forget your powers, because whatever you have would disappear. That's what I mean.
Understand.
So same with remote influencing. Like I don't want to do that, because it will still have an impact. I'm trying to do good. Like I've been using my psychic abilities to help people to do good, not to do bad things.
Right.
So that's my whole intent. Otherwise, I might as well not do anything. I can just stay home and focus in my life and not help people. So the only reason why this drives me is to really help people mostly.
You mentioned that you're receiving messages from ETs. What kind of messages actually they're providing to you?
Well, I mentioned that my star family said that they wanted me to awaken the star seeds of this planet. It's a very broad agenda, and I still don't know to this day what is the directory, whatever. Like I don't have a book or instruction manuals to tell me how to do it. So I don't know. I mean, basically, maybe this is part of it. Maybe just by sharing my experiences with other people is enough. I've been working with people like young kids to help them read with a third eye. There's a flip coin to that equation too. Like when you try to teach a child to use remote viewing or using a third eye for basic reading, like reading a book right up close, at first it's fine, but what you will discover down the line over time is like those kids become different from the rest of the classes. And my daughter is a prime example of that, because while she was very good at doing this, I had like 10 volunteers, so 10 parents who decided to bring their own kids from the same school to do this third eye reading session with me. And they witnessed what happened, and they all believed it. Like they could have not ignored it. But unfortunately, what you see is that those kids, as they get involved into the school systems, they get criticized and ostracized, almost from their belief systems or their psychic abilities, and therefore they themselves shut themselves down and they don't want to do it anymore. So my daughter don't want to even try. She's 11 years old, 12 years old now, and she doesn't want to do anything of this nature anymore. But she's open to it, and maybe down the line she'll try to be more open to it. But at this stage, she rather just spend time with her girlfriends and do nails and those kind of things.
Girl stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. For conclusion of this, what you can say, what kind of message you can leave to believers and to unbelievers to about the abilities humans have I mean, they're sleeping somewhere, but they can be wake up.
Yeah. So, what I came to realize is, our roles as human beings, when we incarnate into these bodies, we have our own path, to follow. For the believers, whatever I explained today may seem natural to them. They might just realize it's true. But the thing is, like, they're already on that path themselves. So I don't have to convince them to do any more. Like, they know it exists. They know they can just simply try to meditate and develop their own psychic abilities, because in all honesty, anyone can do this. It's just a matter of being open to the idea and trying to practice. And the more you do it, the more you let's say you try to close your eyes and meditate in a very serene environment. It's hard to do for most people, in their busy lifestyles, with their work, with their families. It's very hard to get that Zen, attitude. So that's the reason why, some people may be doing it when they're on a holiday or whatever, but it's very hard otherwise. When your life depends on it, or like for me, like I've got nothing else to do, like I can spend my life doing it every day. I do have my family, but I don't have the stresses of the day-to-day that most people do have, so it's more convenient for me. As for the non-believers, I'm not here to convince them to think otherwise. It's not my role trying to change that, because again, if we go back to the fact that they were born, on this earth with their own path to follow, whatever happens to them, if they see this interview and they just listen to it, they will think right away it's nonsense, because they don't believe in it. They don't want to believe in it. It completely collides with their belief systems. So they don't want to change that. That's their life. That's what they have to follow. Eventually, if something is supposed to be happening to them, an event, some kind of traumatic event may happen to them that will change their views. But it's not for me to change that for them. I'm not a guru. I'm not here to try to educate them on anything. I can share my experience. They can listen to it. In all honesty, most non-believers will not listen to this interview. And if they do, they will try to criticize it and, paint it with a disbelief brush. And so there's no point.
All right. Thanks so much for your time to be with us. We appreciate that. And happy holidays.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. Same to you.